So we are going to change gears a little bit now. So no more research, okay, no more science. So we'll talk more about some efforts that, in this case, the AASV PRRS task force has put into developing what could be or for a national plan for PRRS elimination, or at least try to identify some of the steps or some of the gaps still, if that's the way we want to go. So I will be presenting today as chair of the AASV PRRS task force. I serve as chair, and then I want to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing for the last few years and where we are. And I would like to give a special recognition to both Lisa Beckton and Harris Nelson as well, that we put together this presentation. So again, I will give you some background, how we got where we are, and I will tell you about this document that we've put together that develops or presents as a first step this framework that what could be the guideline or the roadmap to go or towards achieving or doing a national program for PRRS elimination. Then I will describe some of the main points of the document, discuss, present the process that we have followed and some of the things we see going forward. But also, I look forward to the discussion. Again, this is nothing set in stone, but basically what we thought is that at some point in time, the ideas that they've been discussed in the past and some of the ideas that are on the table right now, it's easier to be discussed and evaluate if they are in writing. So that's why I refer to this framework document as a starting point and as something that we hope to continue develop. Okay? As I said, I serve as the AASV PRRS Task Force Chair, and the mission of the task force is, in one way, provide information to the veterinarians, help educate the community in many aspects of PRRS, PRRS control, PRRS diagnostics, and so on. And also provide communication for PRRS-related information, again, to all the members of the AASV. I listed here in a smaller print the members of the task force as it currently is. Okay? So just, again, to give you some of the background as well, is that the AASV and the National Pork Board and the NPPC have all passed resolutions that they say in one way or another in their language to work towards the development of a national PRRS elimination plan. Okay? And that's work that's taken place in the last 5 to 6 years. So all those three institutions have that language. I have here the position statement or the resolution of the AASV, and the way how it's written, it recognizes the cost of PRRS to the industry, and I highlighted in blue in particular what it says about the AASV, that elimination of the PRRS virus from the North American swine industry is the long-term goal. And then it goes into saying that would work in partnership with the swine industry, again, to promote collaborative projects to eliminate PRRS at the local, regional, and national levels, and again, communicating and identifying needs, and so on. Okay? But again, it has this vision that if we want to be successful in some way, we have to have this vision to be PRRS negative eventually. Something similar for the National Pork Board, and the way how it's written, again, the National Pork Board would engage in discussions that prioritize research and education towards continued development and application of tools and strategies with the goal of eliminating PRRS virus as well. Okay? More recently, the National Pork Board strategic plan as well. Those were resolutions, and this is some language that is in the National Pork Board strategic plan for 2020. It says by 2020, the National Pork Board will deploy tools and programs to decrease the annual economic impact of PRRS by 20%, as adjusted by inflation and so on. But basically it says, in some way, we have to make progress towards controlling and minimizing the impact of this disease. It doesn't say how, but it says that's where we want to go. Okay? So at the task force, we usually meet twice a year. One is around the AASV meeting in March, but also in some years we have met around the International PRRS Symposium, which takes place the first week of December, and we have the members getting together and we talk different aspects of PRRS, and there is a lot of discussion. But I remember one day, that was in 2013, that part of the discussion, the way how it was going about, and I think it was Dr. Tim Lola, if I remember right, was that there is the expectation by the producers that veterinarians will lead the efforts to at least develop a plan to eliminate PRRS from the national swine herd. We always say that the plan itself needs to be led by producers, but in some way the expectation is that the veterinarians or the producers look at the veterinarians at least to provide that roadmap and tell or guide the producers on how it should get done. So that comment, to a certain degree, stuck to me as the chair. I said, well, maybe it's time when we have to put together something, at least something in writing that we can look at it and we can discuss it and then improve from it. So the question was where to start, okay? Because it seems like it's certainly a very big task if you really think about it. So the goal as this first step was to develop this a framework for a PRRS elimination program, okay? And I say a national PRRS elimination program with the idea that this would be attempted in the U.S. or North America. So the expectation was, or at least the assignment as we were going into it, was to deliver a document that would outline the steps to guide the PRRS elimination efforts at the national level. And this document would have a bit of a roadmap to identify what are the minimum requirements, what sort of infrastructure is needed, and then also the gaps, what sort of information, what we have, what we don't have, the research needs, and also the caveats, okay? So, and I want to make clear that this document is meant to be a first draft, that it can be used as a base for discussion, okay? I'm not saying that this is the way how the document it says how PRRS elimination should be done and how to go about in every single step. Is actually kind of high-level first attempt to put the main components of an elimination plan in writing, so that then we've learned over time that if we want to be able to discuss and make progress, things have to be in writing and then measure and then move on and so on. So again, this framework, and I refer to this document as the framework, is conceived as a roadmap to assist swine producers, allied industry, and eventually regulators in the journey to control and eliminate PRRS from the national swine herd. So how were we going to do that? So at that point, there was a decision made to create, again, to have a smaller, so the task force, you could see there are, I forgot how many members, there are maybe 15 or so. But we said, let's have a smaller group of people. Some were from the task force itself, but some were from the industry in general with different backgrounds and expertise that had experience with eradication with other diseases, that had different experience and so on. Let's get together and let's just start talking about it. I mean, review some of the lessons that we've learned or with the other diseases like PRV or hog cholera that often are being used as reference points. And then let's start working on it. And here you can see the group of people who were identified at that time, and there's been 2 meetings already that took place. I would like to take a second as well to recognize the efforts and contributions of Dr. Mark Ingle and Dr. Jim McKean that unfortunately, as you know, they passed away. Dr. McKean, in particular, he was the one who was going to take the lead this subcommittee, and he had put some thoughts together even prior to get started, and he and I had many discussions on how to in some way move forward on this. But unfortunately, he passed away before we could get started, and then I took it on myself to at least move the ball forward and get it rolling. So these were the people, have been the people who've contributed up to this point more actively, and then I would like to recognize their contribution. So going into it, and then so as well as part of the process, so this first group, this subcommittee, again, it did some of the work about discussing it as a first step and putting things in writing, but then this was to report back to the task force itself on the effort, on the document, and again give them an opportunity to comment and make modifications as needed. So now I want to talk more about the document itself, what it entails, and then also some of the background and assumptions that we did going into it, okay? As you know, and I don't have to say much about this to this audience, but we recognize that PRRS cause significant losses to producers. And again, we recognize that the producers, based on the resolutions that have been approved, have expressed a clear strategic intent to limit the impact of PRRS. So we took that as in some way, the starting point to start working on this. And then again, there is this virus. It has the ability to change, and then there is this ongoing emergence of strains that can be very, very devastating to the industry. The other thing is, and we see it for the discussions we had today already, it's the impact of viral diseases on antibiotic usage. And in the climate where we are today, I certainly think that needs to be taken in consideration as well as perhaps the right thing to do. The other thing that we understand is, and we recognize, and there are many things we don't know about PRRS, but there are things we know, and there are control strategies that we know they work. Okay, they are proven. So it's not like we are starting from nowhere. But again, we recognize that there is much that we don't know about PRRS, in particular to the transmission, okay, and how HERS get transmitted. And I will get to that and identify some areas on research that need to be addressed. The use of the vaccines, again, that can be of assistance to manage the disease, but their role in the national effort, at least in our first discussions, it wasn't clear. And we did not want to get down to the path of just discussing that, so we left it at that point. So some other assumptions, again, that the program must be producer-led. This is, at the end of the day, the producers who own the pig, so it needs to be producer-led. Again, the document, the framework recognizes the challenges with preventing herd reinfections. There are still questions we don't have. We don't know the answer. And then it could still be that, again, this helps us to identify tools and strategies that might be required before this plan can be implemented. But I guess I think it would be a good step in the right direction if we could do that. And then the other thing is that the knowledge will evolve, and the program plans, the plan itself may need to change or be adjusted accordingly as the program or the first steps at least are taken. So that was some of the background information that or the things that we assume going into it, okay? So from a point of view of justification also, how do you sell this to the producers, okay? Or how do you go about it? Again, the cost of the disease is significant. We've seen that. And the emergence of the new strains, we cannot forget about that. And that continues to be significant, and then it certainly has the potential to threaten the competitiveness and sustainability of the U.S. swine industry. Yesterday, Dr. Luc Defrench was telling us about some PRRS strains that had, in some systems, they had identified that could cause 80%. I think it was 50 or 80% of pigs in finishing mortality. So we cannot ignore that, or the high pathogenic PRRS strains that happen in China causing high mortality. So this is a virus, again, that can change at any time, and that could certainly threaten the future of the U.S. industry. The other thing that we were looking at is perhaps this is an opportunity to create an infrastructure for the herd in general, for the U.S., to make a stronger industry and be more sustainable production in the long run. There will be pains going into it, But the idea is that at the end, you become much stronger and you have a better system to monitor for diseases or to protect your system so that when there is the next emerging disease, as what we saw with PED or others, we are just better prepared as an industry. Okay? So those were the things that we think it's important to consider as well, to justify, to take on the efforts of a national program, not just PRRS itself, but the opportunity to have a stronger and more sustainable and more competitive industry going forward. So we recognize the need to elaborate a plan and identify infrastructure to successfully eliminate PRRS from the industry. So again, from a framing of the program and what are the sales or the part of the program that we think is key, it's producer-led. Again, the producers taking the lead on wanting to do this, but be voluntary. In the climate where we are today at many levels, we don't see this to be a regulatory program at this point, but certainly be voluntary. It needs to be national in scope, and then and starting with the first step to control, with the desire to minimize the impact of the virus, and then the goal to get to the eventual elimination. The program is presented on a set of stages, and again, based on risk, those stages identifies that first you want to work at reducing the impact of the virus at the local, at the system, or the regional level. And notice here that I mentioned system, meaning production system, because with the integration that we have, it will depend a lot about what those systems want to do. And then, so you work first locally, and then expand and coalescence into regions. And then, of course, the next thing is once you are to that point, you need to protect those systems or regions, and so on. And the plan would require trust and enhanced communication and certainly surveillance and so on, and we'll talk about that. So those, I'm listing here some of the key components on the plan itself. Surveillance, that would be one. Animal movement, it's always the sticking point about what to do with it. So we identify a few things that I think we need to address or understand per se to be able to make progress. The part of communication and how should producers be organized if this is to move forward. Herd classification, which fortunately we already have guidelines for that, and risk management. So if I just go one by one very quickly on a program for surveillance, again, being voluntary, the best example that we have right now of a system that could help us to keep up on surveillance is the Swine Health Monitoring Program. And again, this program would be directed to assess incidence and prevalence of the infection, help to do analysis, to take decision-making, help with communication. And then we also see that a program like that, given that the program is presented as a voluntary program, needs to have short-term producer value, but with the goal of having a long-term program value, okay, and serve as a measure of success. For such a program, again, looking at the bigger level, to be successful, there are a few things that need to happen that we don't have right now. First of all, there needs to be widespread use of the program, so more systems being part of. I will refer to the Swine Health Monitoring Program right now, but it could be another one, but this is already in place. So all the programs that are part of the regional control programs, for example, they should be reporting, or the companies that are taking efforts. So it needs that leadership from those coordinators to be able to report. The other thing it needs to have is the use of premise IDs. And I know we've made a significant effort on using them, but they are still not widely used. So we need that for many reasons. And the integration of the data automatically as well. And more data opportunities for data analysis and reporting systems. Okay, and then also have clear guidelines for monitoring of body stats and sow farms and reporting as well. As part of this program, we did not get into the details about how we would do the monitoring, for example, or what sort of guidelines we would need to. I think that's something that another group would need to be developed if this is to move forward. But I think those were the key things that we identify. The next one is the animal movement. And this is always the sticking point, right, when it comes down to PRRS and how it comes down to control the virus. And it's very complex. And as part of this, we had a very good discussion led by Dr. Perry Harms about the complexity and the things that need to be taken in consideration when it comes down to transport, which I think it's quite different than the PRV days, not just because of the volume of the animals that we move, but also all the contractual agreements at many levels and so on. But we recognize that animal movement is a major risk for PRRS introduction into regions, so it cannot be ignored. We also discussed that even though we don't like it going into it, the program, it does recognize that at some point in time down the road, control movement might be necessary, okay? So it's not something I want to get hung up on it right now, but it seems like once you are making progress and you are very much down the road of protecting many regions, that perhaps is the moment to have controlled movement. But there are certainly many questions, and one of the questions that remains when it comes down to the transport, it's not so much it's about once you've moved, one of the questions is the poor understanding of the animal movement and the impact of a spread to other areas. If you are to move pigs that are incubating the virus, you ship them and you thought they were negative, and then they are sent to an area in which is negative, but those pigs end up being positive, how do you contain that infection? Because you won't be able to move the pigs. So, and I think this is an area of opportunity in terms of research that we need to understand. What would we do to contain infections on the finishing sites? And I think that's key for us to be able to make progress on such a program. So can vaccination help manage the risk of PRRS infection via movement? Okay, again, thinking about placing pigs that could be incubating, would that help us to decrease the risk of a spread to other, to the neighboring sites? That's a question that needs to be answered. Okay, understanding better the breaks that happen in the finishing site. I think the finishing that's an area of opportunity. By and large, we know what to do in sow farms. We don't know very well what to do or how to keep finishing sites negative so that then they don't represent a risk for the sow farms. Okay. Yeah. So I think this, by containment of infection in the finishing sites in particular, or the nurseries, or after moving pigs infected on incubating the virus in an area, it's something key that needs to be addressed for us to be able to take on this, okay? So on herd classification, again, we need to speak the same language, we need to know what we're talking about, but fortunately there is already the guidelines developed by Holcomb et al. That talks about the herd classification, okay? And that's critical to define a risk-based PRRS elimination plan. The only recommendation we had made at this point was that it needed to have some added definition built on the things we have right now to include the use of vaccine, which the program, as this herd classification as it is, doesn't include that. So the next thing would be the organization of producers. It talks about 2 levels. Again, producer leadership and engagement is central to the program, and here identifies 2 levels. One that is at the local level or regional level or state level, have these PRRS advisory boards, that then again the function is to be the local champions and to collect the local information and disseminate the information to the local participants and help to lead and coordinate and guide the efforts at the local or the state level. And then there will be a national, if you want, to PRRS advisory board that again would help coordinate the things happen at the different local levels. Okay? So those two things that I think would be important. The part that actually I think is also important, it's this program by stages, okay, and then that identify the stages by risk. And this would be similar a little bit like the PRV days or the PRV program, but with different specifications. So the stage 1 would be at the beginning, the program initiation. And if we were to do this, what do we need to have in place? First, again, talk about this producer association, and then it would be very important to identify the participation herds and their status. So we want to do that at front and then enroll the herds in the program. And initiate some testing and to identify some risk at the state level or at the region level, like the points of collection, the slaughter plants, and so on. The stage 2, it would be the stage 1, and in this case, it's already starting to do monitoring. We want to know the health status of the herds at that point. And then the other thing we would be asking is to have, these herds have to have some type of risk management plan in place, okay? And then they would need to have biosecurity and intervention plans. Stage 3, and then again it's taken to the next level. And then at this point it's when things start getting a bit more tricky, because it talks a little bit about we want everybody to participate, okay? We want to go from that voluntary enrollment to having everybody participating. And then in the other one also it starts talking about what do we need to do when we move pigs and so on. And the stage 4 and 5 would be the traditional surveillance, and then how we would classify to be negative. So that's actually what it's in more detail what's in the program. This is stage-based. But certainly there are things on feasibility. It depends on the level of participation and the level of commitment to the program, the cost of the program. And we also think that if it's a voluntary program as it is, there needs to be program incentive and certainly the industry buy-in. And again, we didn't develop what program incentives should be, but they need to be aligned. So some needs going forward. I talk about the premise ideas already and the need to integrate data and having point of information, and I know I'm running out of time, but we're, again, from the research perspective in particular, either development or understanding biocontainment strategies for growing pigs. There will be limitations and going backwards on the program, but it will be important to address those. And again, the document outlines those more clear. Where we are in the process at this point, this was presented to the AASV task force, the AASV board approved to move this forward. Right now it's under the revision of the Swine Health Committee at the National Pork Board. And I think I will leave it here. Again, this is just to give you a first outline on where we are, but certainly we welcome your input in terms of identifying what's missing. Is this the framework? Is this a step in the right direction? But again, keep this in mind that it was set up as a first step to put things in writing and then start throwing darts at the document and making progress on it.